Welcome, brave souls, to our scary stories. I'm your host, inviting you to turn off the lights, pull your blankets closer, and lend me your ears. Tonight, we journey into the darkest corners of our reality, to a place where nightmares lurk and fear reigns supreme. Our story tonight takes us beneath the surface of a bustling metropolis, where an unspeakable horror lurks and a single, brave soul dares to confront it. Get ready, listeners, for our tale of terror is about to unfold. This is the Ghouls' Gambit. The city, a towering metropolis of steel and glass, pulsed with the energy of 1,000 heartbeats. It was a sprawling urban jungle, its veins filled with the ceaseless flow of traffic. The sky above, a broad canvas of smoky gray, threatened to burst, releasing a storm onto the city that never sleeps. Alexandra Morgan, known to most as Alex, peered out from the foggy window of her rundown office. At the top of a worn brick building, her eyes, sharp as an eagle's, flicked over the urban landscape as she ruminated on the recent disappearances. Her office was a portrait of ordered chaos. Stacks of newspapers, teetering like miniature skyscrapers, were strewn across the wooden floorboards. The faint scent of newsprint and brewing coffee permeated the air, as comforting as an old, worn-out blanket. Amidst this clutter, a dim desk lamp cast long, dancing shadows onto the worn walls, while the soft hum of an aging air conditioner offered an odd sense of solitude. Alex, an investigative journalist with raven black hair and a steely gaze, was the city's watchdog. Her desk was buried under a landslide of files and notes about the city's missing persons, each one a life abruptly interrupted, each one a story waiting to be told. The room's lone wall clock, its ticks echoing ominously, marked the passing of time, a constant reminder of the urgency underlying her work. Every missing person's report seemed to be the same: last seen alone, never seen again, only their stripped clean bones left behind as a macabre memento. The city's homeless population whispered about a flesh-eating ghoul dwelling beneath the city. Ghost stories, she had initially thought, but the bone-clean bones told a different tale. Was it possible? Could the ghoul be more than just a specter spun from the threads of urban legends? Her trusted colleague, Mark, entered the room, his face lined with worry. He was a good man, his broad shoulders carrying the weight of the world as if it were a camera, which, in his case, it often was. He set a mug of steaming coffee on her desk, breaking the silence. "Alex, this ghoul business, you don't really believe it, do you?" Mark's voice wavered between concern and incredulity. Alex sighed, her fingers tracing the outline of the most recent missing person report. She looked up at Mark, her gray eyes reflecting the dim light, a storm brewing within them. "I don't know, Mark, but there's something out there, and I'm going to find out what it is." Her words echoed in the room as Mark left her to her thoughts, closing the door behind him with a soft click. Alone again, Alex leaned back in her chair, her gaze drifting towards the cityscape beyond her window. The city's symphony of traffic, sirens, and distant conversations was a comforting hum in the background, a testament to life. Yet, beneath it all, the metropolis held its breath, waiting. Her heart pounded in rhythm with the ticking clock. The fear was real. It wrapped itself around her like a cold mist, its icy tendrils snaking into the very depths of her being. Yet, within the fear was a spark, a burning desire to expose the truth. As she looked over the edge of her window, down to the bustling streets and beyond, and to the unseen bowels of the city, she made a silent vow. She would find the ghoul. She would expose the truth, whatever it was. And this story, whether it made or broke her career, would be told. For in the face of fear, the truth was her only weapon. As twilight descended over the metropolis, a crimson sun spilled its fiery hues across the cityscape, painting the clouds with streaks of gold and purple. Against this vibrant backdrop, the city's skyline was a stark silhouette, a monument to human ambition reaching towards the heavens. Alex found herself in the heart of the city's forgotten realms, the winding, narrow alleys and derelict buildings that housed its homeless population. These were the unseen corners of the city where the shadows of modern society converged. And the only currency was whispered stories. The air in the alley was heavy with the bitter chill of the impending night, and the pungent aroma of rain-soaked earth. Tattered makeshift tents stood huddled together, their patchwork fabric fluttering in the biting wind. In this world away from the world, the hum of the city felt distant, replaced by the murmur of hushed conversations and the occasional echo of a faraway siren. Here, amongst the city's forgotten, Alex was not just a journalist, but a friend, a confidante. She'd spent years building trust with them, listening to their stories and giving them a voice. Now, they were her only link to the ghoul. Bundled in her well-worn jacket, she approached an old man, his face a roadmap of hard years and tougher experiences. Known only as Jonah, he was a fixture in this hidden community, a living library of urban legends and lore. Jonah, Alex began, her breath visible in the chilly air. I need to hear about the ghoul again. Jonah, his roomy eyes reflecting the last vestiges of daylight, seemed to size her up. He pulled his threadbare coat tighter around him and nodded. You've got guts, Alex, chasing monsters in the dark. As the final rays of sunlight succumbed to the night, Jonah spun his tale once more. He spoke of a ghoul, a creature of the underworld that surfaced only to feed, leaving behind only the remnants of its grisly meals. A shudder ran through Alex, not from the cold but from the grave sincerity in Jonah's voice. Then, with a serious look, Jonah shared a piece of the story he had withheld before. He spoke of a ritual, a pact of sorts, between man and ghoul. Alex listened with bated breath, the air growing colder with each word. The ritual was said to appease the ghoul, to quell its hunger and grant it a semblance of peace. Alex, her reporter's instinct buzzing, clung to every word. Fear knotted in her stomach, but it was tangled with a dizzying thrill. The story was taking shape, leading her into uncharted waters. It was terrifying and tantalizing in equal measure. As Jonah's tale reached its end, the alley was steeped in an eerie silence. Alex, despite the chill seeping into her bones, felt a strange warmth, the warmth of a story the ghoul's Gambit smoldering, ready to ignite. Her mind teeming with questions, she thanked Jonah and left the alley. As she moved towards the brighter parts of the city, she cast a last glance at the alley, at the shadows whispering their ghastly tales and the secrets it held. Tonight, the city would sleep under a blanket of fear, oblivious to the horror beneath its streets. But Alex, her resolve stronger than ever, was ready to dive deeper into the nightmare. Dawn was a distant memory as Alex and Mark ventured towards the gaping maw of the city's underground. The entrance to the sewer system stood before them, an ominous arch of worn stone and rusted metal, surrendering its secrets to those daring enough to descend. The city, once a symphony of life, was now merely a whisper on the surface. They stood at the precipice of another world, where the ghoul supposedly roamed. Mark adjusted the straps of his camera bag, his face reflecting a mix of dread and resolve, a mirror image of Alex's own emotions. The scent of damp earth and forgotten rains filled the air, a raw fragrance that marked the boundary between the metropolis above and the labyrinth below. As they passed through the entrance, the bustling city sounds dimmed, replaced by an echoing silence that seemed to pulse in time with their racing heartbeats. Guided by the narrow beam of their flashlights, the duo delved deeper into the vast sewer network. The walls, cold and damp to touch, were etched with time, their surfaces worn smooth by decades of rushing water. An echo of dripping water punctuated the otherwise still air, a constant reminder of the world they had left behind. As they ventured deeper, signs of life emerged. Crudely marked paths, remnants of fires, discarded items, a silent testimony to the existence of those forced to call this place home. The ghoul, once a story told in hushed tones, now felt disturbingly real. They reached a particularly wide chamber, its ceiling lost to darkness. The walls were covered in what looked like scratches, claw marks etched deep into the stone. The sight sent a chill down Alex's spine, a silent yet screaming testament to the ghoul's presence. Mark wordlessly filmed the eerie tableau, the camera's small red light a stark contrast against the gloom. Their flashlights swept over the chamber, each beam catching on odd, shadowed shapes, casting long, grotesque forms on the wet ground. The darkness felt as if it was pressing in on them, an unseen force compressing the air around them, making each breath a struggle. A sudden sound echoed, a scrape like stone against stone. They froze, their breaths hitching in unison. The beam of Alex's flashlight landed on a darkened corner where the sound had originated, illuminating nothing but the damp stone wall. Alex. Mark's voice was barely a whisper, his words dissolving into the stagnant air. But Alex shushed him, her gaze still fixed on the corner. They waited, the silence now a menacing entity, gnawing at their nerves. After what seemed like an eternity, Alex finally exhaled, her frosty breath mingling with the dank air. Must have been a rat or something, she murmured, though she sounded far from convinced. Mark merely nodded, his face as pale as the beam of his flashlight. It was a sobering reminder of the world they had stepped into, a realm of shadows and monsters, a place where fear was not just an emotion but a tangible presence, a third companion on their journey. As they ventured further into the bowels of the city, they carried with them the weight of the chilling reality. They were in the Ghoul's domain now. Underneath the city, Alex and Mark ventured further into the labyrinthine sewers, their flashlights casting erratic shadows that danced and twirled on the moss-laden stone. The air was denser here, laden with a musty dampness that clung to their clothes, the scent an acrid reminder of their descent into the unknown. Nestled in the silence, they navigated through the labyrinth of twisting tunnels and echoing chambers, their hearts thudding like drumbeats against the eerie quiet. The play of shadows on the walls made it feel as though the sewer was a living entity, its breath the chill air that swept past them in occasional gusts. Without warning, an earthy, fetid stench filled the air, wrapping around them like a suffocating blanket. The smell, a rancid mix of damp earth and something far more primal, was a stark departure from the cold, dank aroma they had grown accustomed to. Alex paused, her grip tightening around her flashlight. "Do you smell that?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark nodded, his hand rising to cover his nose, his face masked by unease. They moved on, the stench growing stronger with each step. The beam of Alex's flashlight then landed on something that made her blood run cold. A fresh pile of bones, stripped clean and gleaming ominously in the artificial light. Her breath hitched, her mind racing. This was it. The Ghoul was real. A chilling sound echoed through the chamber, a low growl, like the rumbling of distant thunder, sending a jolt of terror through their spines. It was followed by the unmistakable scrape of claws on stone. They were not alone. In the beam of her flashlight, a shape moved. A hulking figure shrouded in the shadows, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling hunger. The Ghoul. It was nothing like the ghostly apparition from the stories. It was flesh and blood, a creature birthed from the nightmares of the city's underbelly. Mark let out a strangled gasp, his camera forgotten as he backed away, stumbling over the uneven ground. Alex, her heart pounding in her chest, stood her ground. Fear had its icy grip around her, but she would not let it consume her. Not now. With a guttural growl, the Ghoul lunged, its movements a grotesque ballet in the dim light. Alex and Mark turned and fled, their footsteps echoing loudly in the cavernous sewer. The Ghoul pursued, its roars reverberating off the stone walls, a chilling soundtrack to their escape. They rounded a corner, Mark slipping on the damp ground but quickly recovering, his hand reaching out to steady Alex. The Ghoul's growls grew distant, the echoes softening. They didn't stop, didn't dare look back until the sounds faded entirely, replaced by their ragged breaths and pounding hearts. Leaning against the cold stone wall, Alex let out a shuddering breath, her body shaking with adrenaline. Mark slid down onto the wet ground, his eyes wide, the color drained from his face. They had faced the Ghoul and lived to tell the tale. The morning sun struggled to pierce the layers of grime on the window of Alex's office. As the new day began, the terror of their encounter with the Ghoul hung over Alex and Mark, a ghostly reminder of the monster lurking in the city's underbelly. A shaken Mark sat across from Alex, his hands wrapped around a mug of steaming coffee. His usual cheerful demeanor was replaced by a somber silence, the after effect of the horrors they had witnessed. Alex, on the other hand, was embroiled in a storm of thoughts. The office was unusually quiet, their colleagues not yet arrived, and she was grateful for the solitude. She combed through the information Jonah had provided about the ritual, cross-referencing it with other folklore and myths. The ritual was said to calm the Ghoul, to grant it a sense of peace it hadn't known. The details were hazy at best, and the price was alarming, a volunteer offering a portion of their vitality to the Ghoul. Was it even possible? She couldn't ignore the pang of fear that clenched at her heart. Mark, looking up from his coffee, finally broke the silence. "Alex, we need to stop this. We've pushed far enough. We've got our proof. This isn't worth our lives." She looked at Mark, his face lined with genuine concern. But something within her refused to let go, refused to back down. This was more than a story now. This was about them, about the city they called home, about the shadows they shared their world with. Alex responded, her voice steady. "Mark, I know you're scared. I am too. But this Ghoul, it's our responsibility now. We need to find a way to stop it." Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. He glanced at Alex, the corners of his mouth turning downward in a worried frown. But he said no more. The room fell into silence once again, save for the rhythmic ticking of the old wall clock and the distant hum of the city coming alive. As the day unfolded, Alex delved deeper into her research, while Mark busied himself with their recorded footage. The office came alive with the arrival of their colleagues, but they paid little heed, their minds immersed in their grim pursuit. Alex could feel the fear threading through her determination. She was chasing shadows, treading a path littered with the unknown. The reality of the ghoul loomed over her, a monster born from the darkness beneath their feet. The city buzzed with the hum of life, indifferent to the looming terror beneath its streets. Above ground, Alex's quest for knowledge led her to a peculiar place, a nearly forgotten section of the city library, dedicated to arcane lore and ancient rituals. The air in this part of the library was tinged with the scent of aging paper and dusty leather, a silence so profound it almost seemed sacred. Alex sat alone at a weathered wooden table, her eyes scanning the brittle pages of an old, obscure text. A scholar of ancient cultures had compiled the tome, his life's work dedicated to the documentation of various rituals from across the world. Hidden among the lines of archaic languages and cryptic symbols, Alex found what she was seeking, details about the ritual to quell the ghoul. The ritual required a willing participant to offer their vitality, a symbolic surrender to the beast. It spoke of ancient rites, specific incantations, and a connection established between the human and the ghoul. The description was shrouded in the mystery typical of such texts, but it gave Alex a thread to follow. Her heart pounded in her chest, her pulse thrumming in her ears. She could feel the enormity of what she was considering. The ritual was dangerous, a leap into the unknown. But if it worked, if it could prevent further harm, wasn't it worth the risk? While Alex grappled with the implications, Mark, back at the office, combed through their footage, his hands trembling slightly. The raw terror of their encounter made the hair at the back of his neck stand on end. He tried to shake off the feeling of dread, focusing instead on the task at hand. When Alex returned to the office, she was met with Mark's worried expression. She shared the details of the ritual, her words echoing ominously in the room. Mark's face paled at the revelation, his worry deepening. "Alex, you can't be serious about this," Mark protested, his voice barely more than a whisper. This is madness." Alex, her resolve hardening, looked at Mark. She knew what she was suggesting was fraught with danger, but she also knew they were running out of options. "I know it's dangerous, Mark, but we're not dealing with something ordinary here. If there's even a small chance this could work, don't we owe it to the city to try?" Alex's voice was firm, her eyes reflecting her determination. The city lights flickered against the encroaching dusk, casting long shadows that danced in the cooling breeze. Inside the dimly lit office, the atmosphere was tense. Mark and Alex sat across from each other, an uneasy silence stretching between them. Mark was grappling with the daunting reality of their situation. The thought of Alex performing the ritual, risking her life, left a sour taste in his mouth. "You can't do this, Alex," Mark implored, his voice echoing his desperation. "It's too dangerous. We have to notify the authorities, give them our evidence." Alex remained unmoved, her gaze steely. "They won't believe us, Mark. You know that. We have to do this. It's the only way." The conversation ended in a stalemate, their differing perspectives clashing, leaving a chasm in their once united front. Mark, unable to sway Alex and consumed by worry, made a difficult choice. He left the office that night with a heavy heart, his loyalty to his friend battling his fear for her safety. The following day brought a storm, the skies above the city unleashing torrents of rain that battered the glass windows of the office. It mirrored the turmoil within Mark. In a move born from concern but felt like betrayal, he informed their editor about Alex's intentions. The editor, a stern woman with a sharp gaze, summoned Alex to her office. The rain drummed a steady beat against the windows as the editor voiced her concerns. "Alex, this story, it's not worth your life. We can't allow you to continue," she insisted, her tone brokering no argument. Faced with the ultimatum, Alex felt a surge of defiance. "I won't stop," she declared, her voice steady despite the maelstrom of emotions raging within her. "If you can't support me in this, then I quit." She walked out of the editor's office, her decision marking the end of her tenure at the newspaper. As she packed her things, she couldn't help but feel a sense of betrayal from Mark. But amidst the hurt, her resolve remained unwavering. She was alone in this now, and perhaps, she thought, that was for the best. Evening descended upon the city like a soft shroud, the setting sun painting the horizon in hues of burnt orange and dusky pink. Against this backdrop, Alex prepared for her descent into the city's underbelly, her determination unwavering. She gathered her equipment, her fingers lingering on the antiquated items required for the ritual. A lock of hair tied with a red string, a jar of river water, and a handmade iron dagger. Each item strange and out of place in the modern world, or the weight of ancient lore and the gravity of her task. With everything ready, she took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her plan was to stream her encounter with the ghoul online, to show the world the truth lurking beneath their feet. It was risky, but necessary. Armed with her camera, the ritual items, and a heart full of resolve, she navigated the labyrinthine maze of the city's sewer system once again. The familiar dampness welcomed her, the weight of the city above her, pressing down like a heavy blanket. As she delved deeper into the darkness, the fear was her constant companion, whispering doubts and amplifying the eerie silence. But within her, a steady flame of courage flickered, fighting against the encroaching darkness. She reached the chamber where they had previously encountered the ghoul. The scent of decay still hung in the air, a grim reminder of the creature's grisly meals. Setting up her camera, she began the live stream, her voice echoing into the silence, reaching out to the world above. Hello, everyone. This is Alex Morgan, coming to you from beneath our very city. Today, we're going to uncover the truth of the Ghoul's Gambit. It's time the world knows. She took a shaky breath, steadying the camera before moving to begin the ritual. The sound of her heart pounding in her chest seemed deafening in the quiet chamber. She prepared the ritual items, placing them in a specific pattern, just as the ancient text had described. As she recited the incantations, her voice trembled slightly. Each word seemed to ripple through the chamber, absorbed by the damp stone. As she finished, a cold gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the candle she had lit. In the sudden darkness, she could hear it. The ghoul. Its growl echoed through the chamber, a low rumble that set her nerves on edge. It was here. The eerie silence within the sewer chamber was shattered by the ghoul's guttural growl, a chilling soundtrack to Alex's desperate gambit. Her live stream was still running, the red light of the camera providing a small beacon in the darkness. She faced the ghoul, its ominous silhouette barely visible in the dim light. She was live on air, the city her captive audience. The ghoul was more menacing than she remembered. Its hulking form exuded an aura of primal fear that gnawed at her sanity, its glowing eyes a pair of ghastly lanterns in the void. Yet she held her ground, her hands clasping the iron dagger tightly. Alex's heart pounded in her chest like a drum, the tension in the air electrifying. She began reciting the incantations, her voice wavering but loud. The ghoul's growls softened, its lumbering figure frozen, as if the incantations held it in place. As she finished the last phrase, the chamber fell silent. A chilling wind blew, sweeping across the chamber, and then there was stillness. The ghoul didn't move. It stood there, its eyes glowing less brightly. Had the ritual worked? Seconds stretched into minutes, the silence amplifying the pounding in her chest. Just as she began to hope, the ghoul let out a terrible roar, its claws scraping against the stone in anger. But it didn't advance, its body seemingly locked in place. Alex gasped, backing away. Fear coursed through her veins, her mind racing. It didn't attack. She had to keep it at bay, had to continue. With shaky hands, she held up the lock of hair, the next step in the ritual. On the surface, the city was glued to her live stream, their breaths held as they watched the face-off. Alex, with the city's fate in her hands, continued her battle against the ghoul, courage and fear waging a war within her. The final chapter of the Ghoul's Gambit unfolded in the depths of the city's underbelly. Alex stood her ground against the ghoul, her body poised for action, her eyes reflecting the grim determination that had brought her this far. With the city as her audience, she held the lock of hair aloft, its red string a vivid contrast against the darkness. As she recited the final phrases of the ritual, her voice echoed in the cavernous chamber, drowning out the ghoul's frustrated growls. The ghoul's glowing eyes seemed to dim further, its monstrous form quivering. An unnatural silence fell over the chamber as Alex finished the incantation, the echo of her voice fading into the cold stone walls. All that remained was the soft hum of the live stream, the camera capturing the historic standoff. Then it happened. A blinding light erupted from the lock of hair, illuminating the chamber with an ethereal glow. The ghoul roared, the sound reverberating through the chamber, but it remained rooted in place, the ritual seemingly holding it captive. Alex, shielded by the light, advanced. She held the iron dagger out, its blade glinting ominously. The ghoul's growls softened into whimpers, its once terrifying presence diminished under the force of the ritual. With a trembling hand, she cut a lock of her hair, symbolically offering her vitality. She tied it with the red string, her hands defying her fear. She held her breath as she approached the ghoul, the final piece of the ritual waiting to be enacted. As she reached the ghoul, she tied the lock of her hair around one of its enormous claws. The ghoul, the terror of the city, looked at her, its monstrous face reflecting a glimmer of peace. The ritual completed, Alex stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. The chamber filled with an intense light, blinding her momentarily. As her eyes adjusted, she found the ghoul gone, leaving behind an empty chamber and an echo of its terrifying existence. On the surface, the city heaved a collective sigh of relief. They'd witnessed an unbelievable event, their very own horror story reaching a victorious conclusion. Alex, their unsung hero, had faced the beast and emerged victorious. As the ghoul's gambit came to an end, Alex left the sewer system behind, her task completed. She emerged into the dawn of a new day, the rising sun signaling the end of a nightmarish ordeal. But even as the city rejoiced, there was an understanding. The ghoul was gone, but the shadows beneath the city still whispered of unknown horrors. As for Alex, she knew her journey had only just begun. For every ghoul vanquished, a new tale was waiting to unfold, a new mystery begging to be unraveled. And she would be there, ready to dive into the darkness again, carrying the city's hope on her shoulders. And so, dear listeners, we conclude our journey beneath the city, emerging from the shadow of the ghoul into the dawn of a new day. But remember, the darkness still whispers of unknown horrors, and our brave Alex may yet have more tales to tell. So until our paths cross again in the eerie depths of our scary stories, remember, keep the lights on. Good night and sweet dreams. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.